Hi, everyone. This is Stephanie from the Yale Alumni Association. I am very excited to be back in the Yale Alumni Live space and to be with a very special guest today, Bill DeWitt III, who is the president and part owner of the St. Louis Cardinals, who are doing a really exciting thing this summer as part of the MLB in London. He's going to tell us a little bit about that today and his own Yale story. So, Bill, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Stephanie. Good to talk to you.
You two, we're super excited about all the things that are happening in baseball right now. There's been a lot of changes. We'd love to hear from you some of the things that have been going on. But let's first start with your Yale story. So will you tell us a little bit about why you chose Yale and a little bit about your Yale experience?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Cincinnati. Both my parents grew up in St. Louis, but then moved to Cincinnati in the late 60s and raised our family there. And um, I was just an active kid with sports was a big part of it and academics. And I ended up going to prep school. I went to Taft in Connecticut,
Oh,
not too
okay.
far from Yale.
Yeah.
And went to Yale and really loved it there. Did a bunch of clubs, a bunch of activities. Probably the thing that I did the most that, as far as academics and extracurricular was I was on the golf team.
Okay.
And played some JV hockey, and so a lot of my friends were hockey and golfers. Um, and I did some studio art related stuff as well, so I've tried to keep up with that too.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. So usually people will tell me or give me a pitch for the best residential college, which is their residential college. Which college were you in?
I was in Pearson and lived there a couple of years and really loved it, and it's the best. So,
Yeah, that is always what I hear after you say the college. It's the best one.
right,
They're
yeah,
all amazing as far as we're concerned. So I understand that you have a pretty big Yale legacy. Lots of family members have attended Yale or are attending Yale. So can you tell us like a little bit about what that's like to have this family connection to Yale?
yeah. Well, it's special. My father started the trend, and he's still active alumni. Um, and then I went there. My daughter Natalie DeWitt went there, graduated last year. My sister Margot went there. We overlapped 1 year, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Or no, we didn't overlap 1 year. We missed each other by a year. But and then her daughter is there, and Betsy Good, and then Libby Kern, my niece, is also there at the moment. So lots of Yale participation in the family, and we've all just really loved it.
Is anybody else in the same residential college as you? Did you guys all stay in the same college or did you spread out a little bit?
Yeah, the nieces and have all, I think, settled in Pearson because I think you're allowed to choose your college of your parent, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
um, that we've utilized that benefit, and I think we're all kind of Pearson.
So Pearson is very much a home away from home for your family. I love that.
Yes, for
That's
sure.
awesome. So do you have any sort of favorite memories outside of your activities, your residential college? Was there like anything about New Haven that you really loved the most or enjoyed the most when you think back about your time at Yale?
Yeah, I look back so fondly with the friendships, and we
Yeah.
used to go, to Demery's. We would go to Toads. We would.
Yeah.
I always said because some people would give New Haven a bit of a bad rap, and I would say, here's the thing: the campus is beautiful, and
Mhm.
you kind of get the best of both worlds at Yale with an urban campus
Yeah.
and the things that brings and provides, like great restaurants, even better now
Mhm.
than when I was there. But
Yeah. Yeah.
but then you also have this great idyllic campus. I really view it as the best of both worlds, being in New Haven, and so we used to do fun stuff there, and we would also, just being where it is, occasionally we would take trips to visit friends at other colleges, and
Yeah.
there's just so much going on the East Coast that's
Yeah.
close by, and
Yeah.
we took advantage of that.
Yeah, we hear that a lot, and I'll tell you, Toads always comes up. So obviously, Toads is a very integral part of the Yale experience. So after you graduated from Yale, Bill, tell us a little bit about your early career.
So out of Yale, I went to DC, and my first job was with the Environmental Protection Agency.
Oh, okay.
It was a fun job. I was an assistant to the head of the agency, Bill Riley, And I did a lot of briefing books, and I ultimately ended up writing some speeches for him, and just kind of really understanding and learning the agency and all the issues it deals with, as well as kind of got a feel for how our executive branch works in the government. So I really enjoyed that. And then following that 3-year stint, I went to Harvard Business School and graduated in 1995. And then from there, I stayed in Boston for 1 year working for a finance professor. And then in 1996, my father led the group that bought the Cardinals from Anheuser-Busch in St. Louis. And for him, it was a real homecoming. He had grown up in St. Louis, and I had relatives there, my mom too. And so that was my next step on the post-Yale journey. And I've been in St. Louis ever since with the Cardinals.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So tell us what that's like. Tell us, you obviously said it was a homecoming for Dad, but what was it like to be a part of something so big? Because there's obviously a very big fan base and people get very excited about professional sports. So what was that like for you to transition into that space?
Yeah, well, I mean, just kind of getting my feet wet. I worked on a number of projects that were kind of business development oriented, worked on concession related stuff. And then my first big project was I worked for, we changed our spring training location from the west coast of Florida to the East Coast. And so I worked on the Roger Dean Stadium it ended up becoming, all the architectural and construction and finance and all that stuff. And so I kind of hit the ground running with that project. And it turned out to be great training for me later in my Cardinals career, because we ended up building a new stadium that opened in 2006 in downtown St. Louis, and then subsequently built a development next door to that. And it really is cool to have a great institution like the Cardinals, and to be able to kind of transition it into a next phase of what it needed to be. We had the trends in baseball were all moving in that direction, new stadiums and more baseball single purpose use, and just growing this company along with the growth of the baseball industry and the sports industry in general, and trying to keep up with the innovation that's happening. But St. Louis is such a great sports town.
Yeah.
We're lucky because the fan base is just amazing. They come out. We lead the league in attendance, or we're usually first, second, or third, which is pretty amazing.
That is amazing.
Yeah, for a market that's further down the list in terms of DMA.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. So it sounds like your experiences at Yale and your experiences at HBS were sort of a perfect marriage for your role with the Cardinals. It seemed to all flow, even though it might not have been the most logical thing. I don't know if you ever saw yourself in this sort of position, but it sounds like it all came together pretty nicely.
Yeah, I didn't know I would be in baseball later in life, but interestingly, my grandfather was in baseball his whole life. So my dad's dad had grown up in St. Louis and worked for Branch Rickey with the Cardinals, and gone on to either executive or ownership roles with the Browns, the Cardinals, the Tigers, the Yankees, the Reds, the White Sox. He had an amazing baseball career. And so my dad had that itch. So I knew, having grown up in the sport, my dad, I knew he was kind of angling for, to get involved at some point, but you never know. So when he finally was able to do it, I kind of jumped in there with him, and we've had a great ride.
I love that. So a lot of people have been asking us when we've been sharing the plans for our Yale alumni visit to London as part of the For Humanity Illuminated event that's going to be happening in a few weeks now. We've been saying, oh, and don't forget, there's the Cardinals and Cubs game. And everyone kind of pauses and says, what are you talking about in London? So can you tell us a little bit about this London series and what it's like to be a part of that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's an amazing thing that baseball is doing. I was pulling up my calendar to make sure I got the dates right, but it's June 24 and June 25 in London, and we play the Cubs. Actually, the Cardinals are the home team, quote unquote. So we'll be wearing our home whites. But it's a way for baseball to promote the game internationally. The year before COVID, 2019, the Yankees and the Red Sox played a 2-game series. So this is similar to that. It's at London Stadium. And we were supposed to do it, in 2020, but that was, everything got pushed back. So this is finally that makeup series.
Wow, 3 years later, huh? You've
Yeah,
been waiting.
There was a long wait.
Yeah.
And, it's great because I think it does two things. It promotes the game internationally, and it'll get great ratings in London and throughout Western Europe, most likely. Yeah. And it also gives expats an opportunity to come see baseball because, there isn't as much of it over there as it, obviously in the U.S. And right. So to have a game that counts, 2 games that count in the schedule, it creates a real buzz. And I think, for those reasons, everybody's really excited about this series.
Yeah. Is there anything special that's going to be happening, or things that we should maybe look out for the folks who are in London or the people who might be watching at home? Is there anything that you would flag as exciting or different or unique to look for?
I would say, well, yes, there are some activities where, baseball is trying to promote, the sport, and they'll have some interactive things. You just go to any one of our websites, the Cardinals or the Cubs, or the MLB website, and they'll tell you all the stuff going on that you can, visit and get there early. And they have all kinds of educational things about how to learn the sport and things like that for people that may be unfamiliar with it. But as a group, our team and several members of our front office, along with the Cubs, will do a bunch of events. There's we're going to do a tour of on the Thames River with some of the players, and then we've got a big gala for the MLB's hosting with a lot of VIPs and other baseball folks. So it'll be probably somewhat of a whirlwind for me.
Yeah.
But we're looking forward to it. And then my family's actually going to travel a little bit in Europe after that for a week. So
that's awesome.
It's kind of be the highlight of our summer.
Yeah, 3 years in the making. How could it not be? And the Cubs are a rival, right? You guys have a good little rivalry that goes on.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's sort of like the Giants and the Dodgers, or the Red Sox, Yankees. Cardinals, Cubs is right up there. It's been going on for over 100 years.
Yeah.
And it goes back and forth, and the fans are passionate. When we're in Chicago, our fans show up and try to spoil their party, and they do the same to us.
I love it. I mean, it is fun. We have something very similar, as you are well aware, in Yale Harvard in the game in November, which we all love so much. So, but dual alumni like yourself, that must I don't know, where do you sit at that game, Bill?
I definitely
you don't have to tell us.
No, it's easy. I definitely root for Yale. My undergraduate allegiance is stronger on the sports for sure.
I love it. So you mentioned the Dodgers and the Giants, and I actually sat in and watched a game when I was out on the West Coast recently, and it was a very different game than the last time I had attended a professional game because of the time clock, and just it felt different. Can you just share with us any sort of casual observations you've made about you've seen based on some of the changes that have been made in Major League Baseball recently?
Sure. Well, I mean, the biggest one, as you mentioned, is the pitch clock. And I think it's really, the other two changes to mention are the bases are a little bit bigger. So a stolen bases is slightly bit easier from first to second to third.
Okay.
And then they eliminated the shift, which as a baseball mom, it's a technical thing, but the infielders were stacking on one side of the infield for players that had pull tendencies or whatever. And it was causing a lot of, it was helpful for the defenses, but it was leading to fewer balls getting put in play and just, less interesting outcomes. So those 3 rule changes have really created a better pace to the game. The average game time has gone from over 3 hours to just about 2 hours and 40 minutes. There's about a 30-minute drop in game times, which is dramatic in baseball, which is a game that hasn't made many rules changes over the years.
Yeah.
So that's and not only is it shorter and quicker pace, but we're finding that it creates more action because more balls get put in play, which is an opportunity for more lead changes and other things. So we're really excited about these changes in the game. Because for so long, the game was, I would say, a little bit beholden to this notion of the traditionalists that we just got to keep the rules the same. It's been this way for 150 years. But what was happening is the game was changing, but the rules weren't. And because, with analytics and all these other tools, um, people had changed the way they approached baseball. And now what we're trying to do with these rules changes is kind of get the game back to the way we loved it before. And I would look back to maybe 20 to 30 years ago when those game times were short. There was a better pace to it. And I think we've gotten there with this.
Right. I would agree. I think it's been so much more fun to watch. And I think that anybody who is headed to the game in London will have a fantastic experience. There's Yaleys on both sides. We've got Yaleys and both teams in different positions. And so we're excited to see how that all plays out. So, Bill, I have one last question for you that I ask everybody is more or less, we have an interesting audience of prospective students, current students, alumni, parents who watch our Yale Alumni Live programming. And I always like to sort of end our conversations with, knowing everything that you know now, looking back on your Yale experience, what would be either some advice or something that you look back and think, man, I can't believe this happened, or I should have taken advantage of that. Just anything that sort of lets people know where you stand with your Yale experience and what you see for yourself in the future, what they can see for themselves in the future.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I talked to my daughter about this too, because she was more of a science major and I was more of a liberal arts major.
Yeah.
And I think just taking advantage of the wide variety of academic opportunities. I mean, in other words, get out of your comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
For me, like the history course was like bread and butter and I would gravitate towards that. But then when I took, an astronomy course or an art class or something like that, I was just always amazed at the level of quality of the teaching, and then the students in there that were like experts in their field already as undergraduates, and you're just like, it's just an amazing place. And I think taking advantage of that by moving out of your comfort zone and doing things that are offered that you might not just think to do unless you really said, I'm going to get everything I can out of this opportunity.
Yeah, it's true. Yale is an amazing place. We're so fortunate to have people from all over the world bringing their different expertise to everyday life in New Haven. So you are one of those. Many of your family members are those amazing students and alumni. So thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. And we so look forward to seeing you in London. Anybody who is London based, make sure you follow along. We're going to let you know how you might be able to get together with some Yaleys at one of the games on the 24th or the 25th. And we will see you all abroad. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much, Bill.
Thanks, Stephanie.